Do you understand the value of listening? The biggest thing in life is we tend to, as individuals, always listen in order to respond. And what do I mean by that? Well, you can be having a conversation with somebody and they're telling you something, and you're only hearing little bits and pieces of what they're communicating about because you actually are waiting to respond. So you're really not hearing everything about the conversation. And I laugh sometimes. I've been involved in conversations, and there might be a couple people or a group of us, and you look at the person that's directing the conversation to somebody, and that person goes to respond, and it is so obvious that they do not understand the value of listening, because their response isn't necessarily responding to what that person was communicating about, the question they may have asked, or the response, again, as they were giving it, was not really being listened to by you, because you want to answer, you want to be the foremost and front and center of that conversation. So you're waiting to either butt in or waiting for your turn to talk when that person's finished, and you go to respond, but you really haven't listened to what the other person said, and your response proves it. Those in the group or the other person, if it's just two of you, may never call you out on it and say, or maybe they don't want to embarrass you, or they don't want to cause a fight or an argument or a heated discussion. They just don't call you out on what you've responded. And when really, in essence, they should, because your response is not focused on actually what they were saying. It was only, response was based on what you thought was the answer to maybe the question you gave them. You ever been that person? Ask somebody a question and really didn't give a shit about their response, and you were going to give your response of what you thought the solution or the outcome should be? Really, at the end of the day, the person that wins is the person that listens. You ever been in a conversation and had somebody say to you, "You're such a great listener," or "You're such a great person that had, to have a conversation with"? I've had that happen. I just had it happen to me in the last few days again, and I get it happen quite frequently, but it's something I have to work on. I have to bite the inside of my cheek. I have to make sure that I'm focusing on what the person is saying and constantly remind myself there's nuggets of information in what they're saying. There's value in what they're saying. Push out the thoughts of wanting to respond with what you think it is, and listen to what they think it is, so that you can have a really meaningful conversation with them. And I've learned that a lot through doing the podcasting. To be a great listener makes you a good podcast host. And why do I say that? This last podcast that I released this past Thursday, Orson talked about the fact that, and he gave me kudos, which I really appreciated, where he said, "I think you do have great listening skills." And he isn't the first person that's told me that. But I'm here to tell you that it doesn't come naturally. I have to work at it. You have to work at it. You have to work at being present in a conversation, whether it's a one-on-one or a group conversation, to actually listen to the person that's talking, that is communicating with you, and tell yourself, they're going to say something that's valuable. They're going to say something and give me a nugget of information that can possibly pivot and help change my life, or make me feel better, or whatever the case may be. What I am saying, though, is listen. Listen to what other people are saying. Respond in only when your response is warranted, not just to hear your own voice. A lot of people respond just to pretend that they're an authority on what you're communicating about, or they want to prove themselves right because maybe you're having a discussion about something and the other person adamant that they're correct. So you basically sit there and you feel you're correct, so you're really not listening to their side of things. They're not really listening to you. You're cutting each other off. Your interruptions make it so that it's really not a conversation, and really you walk away agreeing to disagree, possibly, But guess what? A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. That person may nod their head and smile and say, yes, I agree with you, or give you the impression verbally as well that they agree with you, when in all reality, they really don't. They weren't really listening to you. They weren't paying attention. They were just polite and letting you yammer on, and you didn't necessarily listen to them because you aren't a great listener. You never have been a great listener. You've never practiced at being a good listener. And how can you tell if you're a good listener? Are you listening? Just checking. You need to listen to a conversation, and then you can practice this. Have somebody talk to you, and in that conversation, be able to repeat back to them all the different points of interest or topics or nuggets of information that they brought up in their part of the conversation. And if you can reiterate to them, right, or to others, let's use an example. Two people are talking and another person walks into a conversation, and you're able, and I used to help people practice this when we'd have I teach people how do you interact within a room of people that are communicating. So Mike and Sally are talking, and Jim walks over and Mike says, hey, Jim, this is Sally. This is what Sally was just saying. And you're able to explain what Sally was saying to Jim. Mike does a great job of explaining it. And Sally, you can look at her face and she's got a grin on her face, or she's nodding her head. And you just prove to her you're a good listener because you're able to reiterate what she was saying to you in an encapsulated form, in a point form to the other person. That's what you should be striving to always do. I know on the podcast, when I'm doing an interview, I'm jotting down notes to literally lock into my brain, be an index into my brain so that I can recall what they were communicating with me about, so that I can have a meaningful conversation back and say, you know what, you mentioned this and that and this and that, and I'd really like more clarification, or wow, that's amazing. You brought up this about your parents, you brought up this about your kids, you brought up this about your career. Can you elaborate on this and that, or tell me a little bit more in detail about this? That is somebody that is a great listener. Somebody that is actually attentive to what other people are saying and are able to reiterate that conversation to a perfect stranger walking into the conversation, right? That is a skill that you need to practice. So you need to understand, again, the value of listening. The value of listening creates connection. It cements relationships. It gives people confidence that you are a person that they can know, like, and trust, that you care about what they say. Because when you can reiterate, back what somebody has said, just even in a one-on-one conversation, and you say, hey, Jim, I hear what you're saying. And you mentioned this and that, and you mentioned this other couple points, and here's what it is that I think might help you out. So you've listened to them, you've fed back to them the fact of what they were talking about in a bullet form, and now you can exercise your right to communicate and add substance to that conversation. But what most do is as soon as that person stops talking, their words are, I think this and this and this and that. And nowhere did they pat that person on the back that they were conversing with for something that good that they said in that, in their little snippet of the part of the conversation. So listening is a skill that needs to be focused on and worked on the rest of your life. I know I certainly am, and I continually work on it. And I know podcasting has helped me even that much more be a good listener, so that I actually, looking and listening for those nuggets of information that can help elevate my life, that can help me have a better conversation with that person, so that the listeners who are giving me their time actually are getting value. And it's an actual, not a one-side lopsided conversation, or it's one person trying to overstep the other person and trying to let people know that their opinion or what they have to say is more valuable than the person that was just talking by, starting the statement out, well, this is what I think. That shouldn't come until you've actually fed into the person, the conversation you're having by, again, reiterating some of what they've said, saying that, that was fantastic what you just said about your brother, your mother, your sister, your friends, your work, or whatever the case may be. This is what I've found. So you're complimenting the person indirectly by reiterating some of their conversation, and then part of that conversation will flow into you having the right or the ability to give them your opinion. So remember, always listen to grab information, grab nuggets of information, grab actionable things within that person's what they're saying, so that you can actually build on it. A conversation should build on and go back and forth where each person is giving the other person their due attention. Meaning, listen to what they're saying, block out what you think you want to say back to them. If you're a good enough communicator, when you've done listening to them, it's still going to be fresh in your mind, and you're going to be able to now think fast on your feet or sitting down or whatever the case may be, so that you can give a great response that'll both uplift the person that was talking to you, but also give you the ability to have your 2 cents added in. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't and you're confused, DM me, drop me a comment below. But all I know is one of the biggest weaknesses I've seen in my lifetime, and something I've suffered from and I get better at not suffering from it, is the fact that I need to listen more and not be waiting always to just respond, and really not listening and giving care and due attention to the person that is communicating with me. I hope that makes sense. I look forward to talking tomorrow. God bless you all. Peace out. Stay safe and stay out of trouble.